bit scary movie.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I see dead people. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
So today we are concluding our kind of official Robert Eggers movie trilogy with his 2022 epic historical action drama, as described by Wikipedia, The Northmen.
I am Amlet the Bad Wolf, son of King Auduvon and Warraven, and I am his vengeance!
Yay. I'm thinking like clang, 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 clang.
Yes. I mean, very Game of Thrones-esque, very, all of the Valkyries, all of the everything.
Mm-hmm.
All
and
of the
Bjork.
Vikings. And Bjork. So there you go. That sets it up right there. So obviously this movie is directed by the one, the only Robert Eggers, and it is written by Eggers and Sean, which is the IPA way of pronouncing that Icelandic poet and novelist's name, which makes sense. And this movie stars Alex Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, and Willem Dafoe. So many things to discuss with this movie. Obviously, there are heavy spoilers ahead. We will be talking everything The Northman, what it is, what it isn't. And Jamie, are there any trigger warnings for the people out there?
Yeah, this movie is bloody and there is violence and there are references to sexual assault and there is murder. And there is fate, which might be freaky to some people. Some people who are poisoned with psychedelic mushrooms. And a guy with no nose.
A guy with no nose, the star of the movie.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, it's as far as blood goes, it's everywhere. So if you're not a bloody person, this movie might not be for you. But if you like
on the outside.
Insides on the outsides. Just basically a bloodier version of The Lion King, because the story is kind of the same. So we need to have a plot summary of this movie. Who wants to go for it?
It's Hamlet. That done.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
No.
The end.
The end.
Did you just volunteer yourself?
I think I did by accident. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
Whoops.
What's the plot?
Well, we will put 2 minutes on the clock for you to give us your best 5 minutes of the movie in the first minute and jumbled through at the end in the last minute.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, and go.
So we open up in like a Viking castle village area, and we meet the king, played by Ethan Hawke. He's kind of he's a fine king. And he teaches his son. He basically tells his son that he should always get vengeance on his father, like always keep his back, always, whatever. And then his brother ends up killing him, the other king, and he ends up. The prince ends up escaping, and then we flash forward many years later. He's an adult. He's kind of with this other kind of scavenger group who invades other little villages, and then he sees a vision, kind of like a soothsayer or something from the gods, Bjork, reminding him that he pledged an oath to his father to avenge him. So he goes back to find his uncle in Iceland, and he poses as a slave. He ends up rising in the ranks of slavery. He meets the Anya Taylor-Joy Olga character, who they kind of team up together. There's a lot of mystical things that go along with this, but he ends up facing his uncle, and they kill each other. And he is brought to Valhalla, and Olga is pregnant with his child, twins. But he basically gives himself so that they can survive and live, because he killed the children and wife, his mother, of his uncle before killing his uncle. And that is the Northman. Also Hamlet.
Yeah.
But it's also based on something.
Time left.
Oh, really? In Hamlet. So there are lions. There's a lion named Mufasa, and there's a lion named Scar. And he says, "Brother, help me." And then he says, "Long live the king." And then he drops him into the wildebeest stampede. And Simba thinks it's his fault because Scar tells him that it's his fault. And then he only learns later that it's not his fault after he makes friends with a meerkat and a warthog. And then he has to fight his uncle, and he defeats his uncle, and his uncle is eaten by the hyenas because he double crossed them. And then, long story short, he takes his rightful place as the king of Pride Rock. That's the Northman.
Absolutely.
And that's the plot.
That's exactly what the Northman is. So if you don't want to watch the bloody version of that is the Northman, just watch The Lion King or a version of Hamlet. And then you'll be okie dokie, just
all
fine.
caught up.
Yes. Or if you want to watch Thor.
Actually,
because
the Thor movies, I know a little bit about Norse mythology, but the Thor movies really helped me here.
Yes, exactly. Anything about Odin,
Freya,
God of War.
Totally.
Yeah.
Valkyrie,
Valhalla. Absolutely. Yes.
Totally.
So you can get your kicks anywhere. You don't necessarily have to watch this.
Just to be clear, and I know we're joking about Hamlet and the Lion King, but this is actually based on the story of Amleth, the Vikings prince story that Hamlet is based on, that the Lion King is based on. So
no way.
So the Viking story of Amleth is what Hamlet is based on, and then Lion King is based on Hamlet.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize that Amleth was an actual, part of the mythology of it all.
Sure.
Oh, fantastical. Well, let's get into it with our segment of likes and gripes for this movie.
And now our likes and gripes.
Obviously, this just came out, so it's all of our first time watching this, but let's just talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and this relationship in the trilogy that is Robert Eggers and how it fits in all of that. So, Jamie, do you want to start?
Sure. I really liked this movie. I liked it a lot. I think I also didn't really know what to expect going into it. I realized that Brian and I never watched a single trailer because part of it was we wanted to watch The Lighthouse for the first time before we watched the trailer. So I had no idea who was in this or what was going to happen. So I was happy to see some familiar faces from the other two of the series is what I'm going to refer to it as,
yes.
The Witch, the Lighthouse, and the Northman.
Yes.
The trilogy?
So
the trilogy?
The trilogy.
Yeah.
Yes, it.
And yeah, at first I was nervous that I wouldn't like this movie because watching things at home, we have access to subtitles. And I was like, oh, is this going to be like really hard to understand and like hard for me to get? And I'm just going to have a hard time with it and it's going to take me out of it. But it still was pretty clear what was going on. And the language wasn't for me a huge barrier. But it just on there were still some things that I didn't know what they were saying, but I still knew what the gist was. And so I was like, yes, win for me.
Yes.
But it also there was really no point that I felt taken out of the movie. It's over 2 hours long. but I never felt like that need to like, oh, what time? Like the looking at your watch kind of thing while you're in the movie. Except for the fact that there was actually two people that came into the movie theater while we were watching and said that we were in their seats like
oh my God.
an hour and 45 minutes into the movie.
What?
And they showed us their tickets and we told them that they were actually in the wrong theater. So
Yeah, I was like, first of all,
Wow.
we never saw anybody get up, so it's not like they were coming back. And then like we were in the
Right.
middle of the movie, so because they already thought they were late to the movie they were going to, so they were just probably in a rush. But like
they were late to their movie. They were 10. I saw their whole ticket stub. They were 10 minutes late to whatever they were seeing in theater 7.
probably
yes.
the Northmen, but in a different theater. But no, brah, we were in our seats for an hour and 45 minutes. It was
Right.
wild. It was crazy. Anyway.
Anyway, so that was the only time that I looked at my watch. Otherwise, I felt pretty engrossed in what was going on. I haven't really thought about Alexander Skarsgård much since True Blood, to be totally honest. Which I know that I finished it, but if you ask me to like retell, most of what happened, I could not tell you. But I remember him being, perfectly fine in that. And he was great. He was super hunky, and, slashing and very strong.
Yes.
And so that goes under likes. In terms of, I also was really surprised by Nicole Kidman. This might be a hot take, but I feel like there's just too much Nicole Kidman going on right now. It's like every HBO series, every AMC ad that plays right before a movie.
Yes.
I'm just like so tired of seeing her right now. I need a break. However, she was really good in this. And I really appreciated how she just how manipulative she was. And I thought that she was excellent. So I'm like, okay, like that kind of, let me process her being okay here. But all in all, this for me, I liked most of what happened. Maybe the only gripes I have are just like Anya Taylor-Joy's character, and I wanted to know more about like the sorceress stuff. But like this movie was already pretty long, and like she's not the lead, I guess, but I don't know. I just feel like there's parts of her character that kind of felt underdeveloped, and I wish I got a little bit more about her story instead of like needing to see more of like Alexander Skarsgård's abs.
Well, I have a question about
his abs. I probably can't answer that.
No, but I did find a video because I follow Men's Health on YouTube because I like watching what kind of workouts that they do to get to where.
Sure.
And there's this. Honestly, I am a gym head at heart, or at least I try to fake like I am. And so I like to look at the workouts, especially because there's this guy on Men's Health who's like the personal trainer for movie stars. So I'll watch how he trains all of the Marvel characters and all that stuff. But there is a video of him and what he did to train Alex Skarsgård that I found right before we started doing this podcast that I have to watch. But
sure, interesting.
Anyway, so I do have an answer about his abs. Well, I will when I watch this 13-minute video. But the question that I wanted to ask about Anya, I got confused at the end. So if someone can clarify, when they're on the boat, kind of on the way back home, when he's saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to give it up or whatever. And then he touches her scar and finds out that she's going to have twins. And he said, oh, my blood runs in your blood. I don't know how he said it was very like, are they siblings like, or was he just saying, oh no, I see that you are pregnant?
Yeah, I think it was that. I think it was like, he had that vision of the tree that like he's also on and saw two children. And so like that confirmed that. I think that was just his way of saying like, I have impregnated you.
Yes. Okay. It was just confused because I was just like, is she in the line of the family line? What is this? A distant cousin? I don't know what's happening. Fantastic. Any more likes and gripes, Jamie?
Any more gripes that I have? Not really. I mean, more likes. I really liked the magical sword.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. And just like, and I liked also how this movie made me feel smart because, like, as I mentioned when we saw The Lighthouse, it made me feel the opposite of smart and made me feel like I can't appreciate highbrow horror. But I really liked how, like, in the like, we get the prophecy, and I was able to like figure out what was going to happen. So I was like, when he talks about like the river of fire, whatever he says, I was like, oh, that volcano is going to erupt and like stuff like that. So I was like, oh, it's like accessible enough to me where I feel very intelligent, but also like I was still, I guess, apparently I gasped at the end, according to Brian, in the theater when Amleth gets fatally wounded. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it was a lot of that whole scene at the end with the volcano was pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of cinematography things that were just so gorgeous about this movie. I also liked there was this tiny transition, but it just stuck with me when when the brother captures Alex Skarsgård for the first time, when after he's like killed his son and he's killed all the people, but then it goes from the army men holding him to then him hanging up on the roof, and they're beating him. And I don't know, for some reason that transition just really stood out, and I thought it was beautifully done, just how the camera angles were. Yeah, I thought that the whole idea of the kind of dead family tree thing was a really cool magical moment in the movie that I appreciated. But in watching this, I definitely said, yeah, this is a glorified Lion King. But actually, it started with Amleth at the beginning. So it all started with him. I liked the story, especially like Jamie said, in comparison to the other Robert Edgar movies. And it was nice to see familiar faces in it as well. I also will go for anything that has to do with Vikings and Valhalla and that whole mythology, because I think it's really interesting. It did feel long to me a little bit. Maybe it was if I watched it another day more awake, then it probably would not have felt as long. But for some reason, there were just some parts I was just ready for him. I guess when he was in the village of his uncle, that whole thing felt really kind of drawn out. But I can understand the reason why, because you want to build up that tension to when you get to the fights and and I like that there was a plan of the first night I'm going to do this, and then the second night I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to make his life miserable first before I actually go in and kill them. Like, I understand that concept, but sometimes it did feel a little bit long, but it still didn't take away from me liking the story, because I did enjoy it. I don't really think I had any other gripes. The acting was great. Even though Nicole Kidman was in it, she wasn't in it for a long time. In the parts that she was in, it was great. And I will say, because Jamie, there's an Apple TV show called Roar, and it's an anthology series. And Nicole Kidman is in one of the episodes,
Oh, is that the one where it's like the woman eats photographs or something? Okay.
Yes.
Yep. I remember the trailer.
Yes. And I just had to skip that episode. It's okay.
Like, I just need a break.
Well, the minute that it literally, and I think that's the description too. It says a woman literally eats photographs is the description of the episode. And the minute she put that photograph in her mouth, I said, yep, I gotta go. I'm gonna exit. But yeah, overall, I liked it. Like Jamie said, I understood it, and it was a very straightforward storyline. It wasn't something that you had to kind of interpret yourself, or it wasn't a symbol of a symbol of a symbol of a symbol. And yeah, and the action of it all was great. All of the fights, I thought it was very well made, and it was very entertaining. So yeah, what about you, Brian?
I really liked it a lot. It's definitely the most, you two have touched upon this, but it's definitely the most accessible of the Robert Eggers movies. I'm really happy that I didn't have Jamie and I talked about this, and she mentioned a little bit. I'm really happy I didn't have to sit through it once to have to see it a second time, if that makes sense. Yeah. The acting was great. The cinematography was great. All that stuff was great. The storytelling was great. The the foreshadowing is wonderful. The elements of supernatural were great. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you saw The Green Knight from last year, but this was good and that was not as good. I know people love that movie and I enjoyed it, but like in terms of like mixing like this like mythology element with the with like historical period, but this was much better. And I also
That was not for me.
Yeah.
I watched like 10 minutes. And I was like, I'm putting my headphones in. I'm just gonna watch TikTok.
Yes.
I really liked all of that. I love the prologue with with the volcano and then the voiceover of kind of that soothsayer who he sees later on in the movie, also played by his father. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. My gripes with this movie definitely are. This is a fake gripe because this is not what the movie was, but I would have liked for it to lean into kind of some of the supernatural a little bit more in some places. Even though that's not what it was about, and I understand that, but I really just dug that aspect of it. And my guess, I do not know this, my guess would be is that it did, and then the final product leaned a little bit out away from that because I'm sure like the production companies and had a little bit more to say than this one that because of the budget than they did like The Witch and The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess my gripe is I would have liked a little bit more layers from the Anya Taylor-Joy character, not just being like the wench who he falls in love with and helps him. I agree with Jamie. I would like they talk a little bit about her like having there's something a little bit more than appears to the eye. And I would have liked to have seen or at least been alluded to a little bit more of that.
Right.
I'm sure that we're a couple days out from seeing this movie, and I'm sure if I see it again, I'll have some gripes. And I had more gripes when walking out of the theater. But like, what has lasted with me from this movie is just like I really liked it, and it was a really good time in the movie theater. It was like it took itself pretty seriously, but there was room for kind of this camp in some ways. Even if they were trying to do the accents for real, like they were still a little like and like him being so angry at some points, that was a little campy. And then, but even that, if that was their intention or not, like it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
The action was great. He was such a hunk to look at. And just the setting and the way it was very stark, and it still had like his directorial like style to it, but it felt a lot bigger and a lot more. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that's you saying that is true. It did feel a lot bigger because of the other two movies that we watched. It was a lot of close-ups, it was a lot of tight shots. And this one, I guess because the story was broader anyway and needed more of environment to tell the story, that it lent itself to having a kind of a bigger feel. But I definitely agree with that. It felt a lot bigger.
Like the Robert Edgar shots were still in there. Like the uncle standing in the doorway, looking around at his dead family, like that, like with just like the strings in the background or whatever, or that like that whatever his like signature like score is for his movies. Like there are these like wide shots where like that the characters are kind of staying there. So it like it's just a picture of that wall. So it feels both claustrophobic and open at the same time, which I feel like he does a lot. Something I also liked about this movie is I feel like in revenge movies, it's very black and white. In terms of like this person was done wrong or done dirty, and then somebody is going to figure out a way to get like taken or something like that, where like we are rooting for him even though he's killing all of these people. We are rooting for him because he's trying to get his daughter, or Death Wish, we are rooting for him because they killed his family, or what. Pick any movie. This one, by that whole sequence of him attacking that village and like the women, the kids being burned in that room, and the women being taken to probably be sexually abused, and the men being and women being chained up to be slaves, like, and then he was like a part of this, and he was like the lead like murderer. I like that because it added gray to what he's doing. And so when the twist comes, which was very predictable for me in terms of the Nicole Kidman scene, that just reintroduced the gray. Like he's trying to like he has a vow to live up to, but like it is not all black and white as we've seen this whole movie. And then all of a sudden, like you have that gray scene again, and he's like totally torn of what to do. And then he has a choice to make. And then what does he do? He makes one choice that fulfills both sides of the choices that he has to make.
Right.
Which is that gray again. So I definitely dug that.
Yeah, well, let's get into all of that because as far as layers, that was a very layered concept within the movie. But let's talk about it in our segment of brains. Tasty. So revenge is basically kind of the main topic.
A dish served cold.
Man, I was going to say it.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
But there's a lot of extra things attached to that, you know. He carries out his revenge, but to what extent? You know, he's dead, which at the beginning, he's willing to die for that because he hasn't met the Anya Joy character yet. And that's kind of his only... Of course, you would want to live through that situation, but he's okay with dying as long as he's avenging his father. And then he's back in Valhalla with his father. So a lot has happened to him. He, at a young age, saw his father die. He saw the village being taken away, and he had to run away and have a whole nother life, to the extent of where he is not even thinking about avenging his father anymore. He's just out trying to live his life until, you know, the Bjork character comes and says, oh, remember you said that you were going to go back and do this, blah, 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 blah. Which is an interesting thing because we kind of think of revenge having such a hold on people that it's something that they would remember. But it's not until that witchy character comes back and says, hey, you need to fulfill this. This is your destiny, that he kind of goes back to it. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's just interesting to think about that the movie is revenge, 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 but that wasn't really his whole entire existence until he was reminded of it. And then he drops everything and says, revenge, revenge, revenge. So it's interesting that he kind of left it alone. I guess my general question is that I'm just now thinking of is, do you think that because that was such a traumatic experience, he ran away and that traumatic experience led him to let it all go until he was reminded of it again? Or do you think maybe a little bit of it was with him? I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because as you were talking about it, I was also thinking like, you know, maybe he doesn't remember perhaps because of the trauma, but like he's, according to the Wikipedia, he's raised as a berserker, which is like those who fought in a trance-like fury within like Old Norse, whatever. So, I mean, even if maybe consciously he does not remember what happened, like he becomes this like tool of violence. Like I it's hard to believe that like he isn't tapped into this anger that's with him all of the time. And maybe he just doesn't know necessarily why.
Where it came from. Yeah.
But like, I think that it's palpable. It's right under the surface. And like, he's not necessarily living this like happy-go-lucky, you know, like meditative life.
Right.
He's, you know, like violently sacking towns and murdering people. And doing like horrible things to people. So I don't know. I feel like that's really intentional. That, I mean, again, he could have been like picked up by this group and felt, you know, like he owed them his life for saving his and joined along and did that. But like, I think also, again, like he could have in theory joined up with any group of anybody. And it's meaningful that I think he joined up with this group that is incredibly violent.
Yeah, that does make sense, though. The idea that all of that anger and rage from seeing his family taken away from him, and now that's being manifested in the physical by him just not even caring about. I mean, that scene where they're putting the children in the little house and burning it, it was awful.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Brutal. And yeah, just him having that transition, or having all of that underlining anger and having that violence just come out forward in that sense does kind of make sense of where he's headed. And it made him strong enough to be able to go back and fight, his uncle, or fight the people that he was trying to get revenge on, that whole entire village, which was also interesting too. Did they say, if you remember, the uncle, he tried to take over, but then someone else beat him to it, and then now he was just a sheep farmer? Did y'all catch that in the movie?
Yeah, I forget. He was overthrown by someone else, and so instead of like facing the consequences of that, he left. He's like in exile.
Okay, and just built up his own little
thing,
area over somewhere else. Okay, cool. So many things. So with all of this anger and suppression of anger, what, in a general sense, Jamie, what can happen to someone who does not process their anger? And not necessarily, some people have a lot of anger and they don't enact revenge, but they do other things that, expresses their anger. But then there are some people who truly and legitimately just try to pack it and push it down and try to live like a normal, friendly, healthy life, but then it kind of can bubble up and manifest itself in other ways. So what can happen to people when they don't process their anger correctly, or healthily, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, like it can definitely lead to like more impulsive outbursts, taking out anger on people or things unintentionally. That could be like destroying objects in your home, like abusing people, abusing animals, like road rage, like all of that, and can definitely impact relationships, your job, your like ability to like focus on different things if there's like any kind of hardship or trigger.
Yeah. And how can someone, or if someone came to you and said, I have all of this anger, this person has disappointed me, I feel like I've been backstabbed, and I can't let go of this anger, what would you say to them to help them kind of try to release that? A short 5-minute cognitive behavioral therapy session.
Would you say
just a real quick?
Yeah. Would you say, "Hey, stop!
Just a quick.
Hey, stop it!"
Yeah, that's where you start. No, but there's like different. I mean, I think it's a couple of things. It's like, on the like cognitive side, it's like figuring out what's going on and seeing like, are there other perspectives that like maybe we're not thinking of? Like, is it helpful for you to like, let your emotions influence your actions and behaviors in this way? If somebody else was like feeling the same degree of anger and rage, like what's a compassionate, empathetic thing that you would say to them? In terms of like other releases or ways to kind of like process if you're set off or like triggered and feeling really upset. Some people can, I mean, I guess it depends on like, how much they're willing to do some of these things. But like people talk about like counting to 10 or like taking a pause, because like the amount of time that you're able to increase from when you get mad to like whatever action you take, like the hope is that you can kind of slow down enough so that you're not just impulsively reacting. And so like pausing, like literally stopping before you act, focus on your breath. You tend to like not take, as full deep breaths when you're feeling like, just like when you're anxious, you're not taking those full, like you're taking those like shorter, shallow breaths with your chest, like deep belly breathing, like focus on like taking in those like big, deep breaths. Sometimes literally like removing yourself from a situation that is like causing you to feel frustrated or angry. Can you walk away? Can you go to another room? Can you go outside? Again, it's like, how do you remove yourself so that
Yeah.
you're creating space in between like your emotions and the action or behavior? Are there other outlets that you can use, like exercise or working out? Like, you are someone that likes to punch things.
Yeah.
Do you like to punch things when you are angry as well? And do you find that helpful?
Listen.
Like,
Punch
I
all the things, yeah.
imagine, I imagine that like boxing probably feels pretty cathartic, especially if
Absolutely.
you're like, you're carrying a lot of stuff throughout the days, or like if you're set off, it's like, is that an opportunity to have that like deep release? So like some high impact activities like that can be really helpful. Other people like grounding stuff, like meditation, again, other things as a way. Again, it's also like kind of taking your focus and attention off of the thing. And like, if you're feeling that energy pent up in your body, how do you get your body to release it?
Yeah.
So those are, I mean, I guess technically he's using his body a lot in this movie, but it doesn't really seem to be helping with managing his anger.
Yes. I mean, yes, do things for your body, but also just don't harm other people in the process. Maybe,
Maybe not so
maybe
much.
not. Maybe leave other people alone. Yes. So, as a society, we often hear the phrase of forgiveness is for yourself, not the other person.
Mm.
Can you talk to me about what that means mentally and forgiving a person for their wrongdoings, in a sense of, I mean, in this case, Alex didn't forgive his mom and he just went full blown, okay, I'm just going to kill you now. But if we were to forgive her, can you just talk about, well, if you even agree with that statement that forgiveness is for you and not the other person, and how we can, and why we need to forgive for ourselves?
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that before, but I think it makes a lot of sense that like the act of forgiveness isn't, and I mean, even with like literally ourselves, like how often are we harder on ourselves than on other people?
Very
Because
true.
like we can't even forgive ourselves for things, mistakes that we feel like we shouldn't have made, or like whatever expectations that we're holding to ourselves. That self-forgiveness can be really difficult. So again, if it's like outside of us with somebody else, is it helpful to be carrying that resentment or like, wanting to get revenge on somebody? Like, does that help you? Like, what are you hoping to get out of that? And does carrying that help you, or does it cause harm? And for some people, they might say like they need it for one reason or another. Maybe like not being able to forgive someone allows them to like set a boundary and stay safe. So like maybe context is important for them. But I think, for other people, like carrying that is like, can, cause a lot of undue stress and harm in other ways. How might that like impact other relationships with other people? Other ways that it might, impact your mental health. How might you be internalizing certain things because you're carrying that like grudge towards somebody else?
Right.
And so I think like thinking about those things, that's where forgiveness can, help you in particular. Also, that is easier said than done.
Right.
And I think like what you said, I think you mentioned about like forgiving versus forgetting.
Yes.
And like, just because you're forgiving somebody for something doesn't mean that you are like fully, absolving them and not remembering what they did. But more of just like choosing not to carry that and still keeping in, because like maybe now the relationship has to evolve as a result of what happened, but you can still forgive them for whatever it is that they did. But like, that's an example of like not necessarily just like forgetting and letting somebody get away with doing something harmful.
Yeah. I think that's
But
where
yeah.
that comes in when you said at the beginning about boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and the aspect of forgiving, but you're not forgetting because now you're setting a boundary so that
Yeah.
it won't happen again. Or like you said, the relationship changes. So I think that is also very important to note that it's a matter of you can forgive the person and you can remove it from your own personal baggage so you're not carrying it, but you can also use a boundary as to kind of redefine the relationship and to also not forget so as for it to not happen again in any relationship, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like a choice. Like when you said it's like for you, I think it's also like you are like all of us have past stuff, right? Like we all have had experiences that like inform and have, shaped who we are. But how much does our past have a hold on us in terms of like dictating how we live our lives? And I think like with practicing forgiveness, it's a way to like acknowledge and reflect on our past and how it informs us without letting it dictate how to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's like usually how I like reflect on that.
Yes, that's great. Can you say that one more time? I think people need to hear
Yeah,
that.
hopefully I can say that again. I have this problem in real life therapy too, where I'll say something and they were like, that was so good. I'm going to write that down. What did you say? And I'm like, oh God, what did I say? It's so good in the moment. The moment is gone. Something along the lines of like, we can reflect on the past and use the past to help inform our present and our future, but that like, it doesn't dictate our like how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
We're pulling from, because also like, what if we don't have those experiences? Like, I think people also get caught up on the flip side of like, well, if this has never happened to me, how do I know how to deal with it?
Right.
If it does happen. And I think also people underestimate how resilient they are and like how many strengths they have to be able to work through difficult, challenging situations. So, you can use the past as a way to inform you, but it doesn't, it's not fate, unlike this movie,
Right. Yes.
where, your life, your future is now dictated because of your past. But yes, that doesn't apply in this movie in particular.
In this movie. But that's a good, we need a mic drop sound for Jamie, because that was some truth bombs happening on Talking Horror. This is what this is.
You don't have to have them. I'll do them myself.
Yes.
Plop. That's the sound of a mic, right? Oh, that was good.
Ooh.
I did that live. Some Foley shit.
Yes.
Producer Ryan, Foley shit.
Yes. Always coming to the rescue. Well, actually, this next question, if producer Brian can give his thoughts on this, but watching this movie, it made me think a lot about how men are treated in the fact of not being able to express emotions. And we see even at the beginning of this movie when the Alex character is a little boy and he sheds that one tear, and they said, this is the last tear that you're going to shed, and we'll give it back to you when you can shed, when you can use it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's so interesting, the idea. And even years later, when Nicole Kidman says to the uncle, don't cry in front of your inferiors, when he's crying over, he just lost his son. And she's saying, nope, you can't show any kind of emotion in front of these people because you need to seem like you are their leader. And so, Jamie, can you walk me through how this can be such a negative effect as men get older in their adulthood, and how it kind of ties into the relationships that they build? And then Brian, if you can just kind of give your own perception of the idea of men not being able or feeling like they can't express their emotions.
Sure.
Yeah. Emotions are healthy and normal, and we all have them. Please express them.
Please.
It is a positive, helpful thing. I mean, there's so much like stigma around sharing like expressing emotions, especially for men. it's super misogynistic, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
know, this
crazy.
idea that like only women are emotional,
Mhm.
and perpetuating that myth just can cause a lot of harm and make expressing emotions really complicated, or like trying to establish what emotions are okay to express. Like anger is an okay expression of
Mm,
emotion in men.
yeah.
But also on the flip side, like, does that then mean that women can't be angry? Like only women can be sad? Like, and who made
Right.
these rules? What book are we pulling from? Like, these are all made up things that for some reason we follow.
Exactly.
Oh, Brian, what are you saying? You're muted.
Oh, I actually was
no.
on and then I just muted myself. I was going to make a joke about, you were like, what book says that? I was like, the Bible.
Well,
Oh, yeah. I haven't finished reading that one, so I'll get back to you on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've used this dumb metaphor for so long in my therapy work, but like if you look at emotions like a bottle of soda, and as your emotions are building up, like you're shaking a bottle of soda and like the carbonation is getting more and more, if you just go to like open up that bottle of soda totally normal, it's gonna blow up in your fucking face. That
yeah.
is what it's like when you're not like regularly managing and checking in with your emotions. If you are being told that you cannot express your emotions and you're just shoving all that stuff down, it comes out. Like, even if you think that you are not addressing it, it
Mm,
still is going to come out. And it's going to come out at the shittiest times, at the most inconvenient times. You're going to feel it hard and intense. And it's just going to be such a fucking pain for you
yeah.
to deal with when stuff does come up. And so allowing yourself to feel things as they are happening when it is safe to do so. And that's my little asterisk, because sometimes people aren't in the right, like, not just emotional space, but like physical space to be able to express certain emotions. Like it's not safe to. And
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind. But I think for other situations, like if something is going on, like your feelings, your emotions are totally valid, and like you are entitled to feel those feelings.
Absolutely.
Otherwise it's gonna blow up and it's gonna be bad. So
Yes.
that's why you gotta release it slowly
Slowly.
back to the bottle.
And just to add to that slowly thing, there's a book that I'm reading that just talks about the cycle. You have to go through the cycle of your emotions. And so she was dating it back to we always talk about fight, flight, freeze, and all that stuff, and kind of processing stressors. And so the stressful thing, happens. So say for instance, you're getting chased by a lion, and then you escape, you run from the lion, you escape it, and then you get to a safe place. Your adrenaline is still running, but you're in a safe place, and then
Oh
you
my
can
God.
kind
Are
of
you
process
reading the
that.
Burnout book?
No, it's Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski.
Oh, I was like, you're literally citing like
Okay.
a chapter of another book that I read that's all about like how to deal with burnout.
Oh, maybe she was
Literally
referencing
talk
that
about the
book.
lion.
Okay, well, maybe she was referencing that book because she has a lot of references of other things. So maybe that's where she got it from. But I need to read the Burnout
That's
now.
funny.
But yeah, and so when you, of course, now our stressors are not being chased by a lion, it's other day-to-day things, and it could be the smallest thing or whatever, but it's the fact that you have to go through the entire cycle of that emotion to get back to
Mm.
the state of normalcy in your body and in your mind, and not skipping a step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes with you, Jamie, just saying, just twisting off the top and then everything exploding. So it's like a matter
Mm-hmm.
of going slow at it and letting the cycle kind of complete itself, and not beating yourself up in the process as well, because that's not going to help. And just like letting it go as it needs to go in a healthy and a safe way, as Jamie also said, because you don't want to time and a place, but never feel like you have to completely suppress all the things. So, Brian, would you like to comment just on the nature
Yeah, now
of
we're done women-splaining to
right?
you.
No, I don't want to talk about my emotions. Thank you. Moving on.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not only a problem in general, but it's a problem like in the media.
Mm,
I think that there's a lot of stuff out there today, content out there that is the opposite of that. That is like allowing people to, but like it's just so ingrained in our social, interactions and all of the social norms that it's like, you know, really hard. But I feel like millennials and younger are definitely breaking out of that kind of greatest generation boomer kind of even Gen X, like all of
Yeah.
that stuff. Like I do think that there's a softening of it, but that may be with every single generation for all we know. Like, but I do think and it's still there. Like I try my best, but I'm not that great at it. Um,
Mm.
uh, but I'm definitely better because of the people I surround myself with, including Jamie and my friend Jay and all of
Yes.
that. Like, um, but I do think it's also, it's a, it's nature and nurture in some ways. I guess because like nurture in just terms of like how you're grown up, what you see, all of that stuff, what kind of environment you grew up in, and all that. But like
Mm-hmm.
nature wise, like I don't know, maybe it's just like it's definitely it's not easy to be introspective in some ways. It's much easier in the moment to move on. Even though you're technically not moving on because like Jamie said, like you're just shaking the bottle a little bit more. But
Yeah.
I think I think this has a lot to do with that. I think it has a lot to do with how we associate that not only with men but also like um uh what just different generation, like what men are supposed to be and do, and like whether
Mm-hmm.
it's like a soldier or whether it is just like the man of the family or the leader or whatnot. Like also it's double standard, like Jamie said. Like if I'm angry or if I'm like authoritative in a meeting, or if I'm just like like that, like people are going to be like, wow, he's a good decision maker, he really took
Right.
charge of that meeting. If a woman does it, she's a bitch, she's
Mm-hmm.
on her period, she's and like that adds to all of that. And you see it in related back to movies. Like there are a lot of male directors like Stanley Kubrick or David Fincher who like are perfectionists, and they're insane people when it comes to detail. But people are just like, well, they just want the product they want. Meanwhile, Nancy Myers needs the perfect kitchen, going to do a million shots over and over again, and she's just like, ugh, Nancy Myers is so difficult to work with, and like it's like no,
Mm.
they're doing the same thing. David Fincher, and Nancy Myers, has different chromosomes. Like that's why we
Yeah.
judge them that way. And like and again, I don't know them personally or the people that have worked with them, so this is just like the stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if it's true or not. That is how it is perceived. And
Mm.
I think that we can all do our part, whether it's just internally being a little bit more reflective of the things that you're feeling and who you are, the small things externally, just like sharing a thought or a feeling. I saw this incredible video. I don't know if you all know Marcus Lemonis. Marcus
Mm-mm.
Lemonis is a businessman. He has a show called The Profit. He's very wealthy, runs a lot of businesses on CNBC. Has a show called The Profit, and I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos by him. I really like him. And something that it was fascinating. He's like, the best way to get to know somebody. He was relating it to business, but he said the best way that you can know somebody is like asking them a personal question that kind of straddles the line between comfortable and uncomfortable, and in the most positive way. He was like, he brought people on stage. He's like, okay, what's something that you regret, or what's something in your life that you wish you could change or that you feel like you missed out on. And then one woman out there said, like, I my time has passed, but I really wish I had children. I look back and wish that I had that experience. And then Marcus said, like, me too. Like, I know
Mm.
I'm a man and you're a woman, and like we would have different experiences, but like I don't have kids. And he's like, and then he turned to the audience like, boom, there, we just connected. It wasn't like I didn't ask them like what their favorite position is. Like I asked them something they
Yeah.
regret in their life, and they can make the decision of how vulnerable they want to be with me. But if they're super vulnerable or if they're not vulnerable at all, you make that connection, and that's how you grow as a person and with relationships. And like, it doesn't have to be you cry in front of people. You can cry privately. But like the idea of empathizing and sympathizing and sharing is something that we also could do a little bit more of, as opposed to being like, I don't know, and like grumpy or whatnot. Like I kind of talk through the spectrum of things, and I'm sure there's a lot deeper things, but that's kind of how I think and see about things, knowing that I'm not the best at it. But I work sometimes harder than other times at being like a little bit more open with how I'm feeling, whether it's with my therapist or whether it's with my friends or Jamie, who I guess is both but none.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that line of questioning, and like that people then have the autonomy to decide how vulnerable they want to be.
Yeah. And it oh no, go ahead, Brian.
No, I got nothing else. I'm shot. That was too much emoting.
He's tired.
Let's wrap this up. Let's do Rotten Tomatoes.
No, but that's great. And thank you, Brian, for sharing, even the slightest bit of
I'm gonna cut it so it doesn't matter. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
They have to all witness all of our vulnerabilities,
Yes.
We gotta be real with the people. Fantabulous, because we get real on Talking Horror. So I
have a question, if you don't mind, Nikisha.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to the revenge piece. What do you? Let's say he had lived. Okay, so his whole life, or at least was that vow to avenge his father, get revenge on his uncle. And he is living his whole life to get to this one point. And he came to terms with the fact that he might die. And he does. But like,
spoiler,
what if he had lived, like, or in any of these movies where they get revenge and it succeeds, or I feel like there's a lot of these movies where like somebody tells someone else, like, don't do it, don't kill them. Like, it's not going to make your dad come back. Like, you always have that scene with somebody. Like,
yes,
in real life, like, what would like, let's say he succeeded, he kills his uncle. Like, then what? Then what does he do? Like, is he going to be an angry father? Like, I guess it's a person to person situation, but like, like then what? Once your life's mission is complete and you're not done with life yet.
Right. Can you truly let it go?
Yeah.
As the song says.
Yes.
How do you feel, Jamie? Do you think that it's possible to let go of that revenge when it's complete?
I mean, I think it depends. Like in this, there's a point where Alexander Skarsgård kind of says like that he's never opened his heart up to anyone else and all he's ever known is anger. But I think that the fact that he is able to open his heart up to Anya Taylor-Joy and like have that connection with her, I think is a sign of like, his ability to like shift the focus away. And there's the part where he goes back because it's his destiny, but also because I don't know if I think that he's wrong, and at least in this world, that like if he doesn't go after his uncle, like he's taken everything away from his uncle. His uncle has nothing left other than for his uncle to get revenge on him, right? Like I'm sure his uncle would probably try to do the same thing and come after him and his family because of what he did to his uncle. But it's like, this never ending eye for an eye that just never stops. But I think for some people, there is still space in their hearts to open themselves up to other things and other people. And sometimes like, how much of that is also like seeing and experiencing that. So again, when he gets picked up by these like warrior guys as a kid and is like raised with them, all he ever knows is violence and aggression, and like he's like that's what he's around. Seeming like we skip some years in between, but just based on how he's interacting with them and being violent on his own, we can assume that that's what he's gotten since he ran away. And so for him to have an experience with somebody that is not that, and that is like empathetic towards him and like hears his story and cares, I think those are things like an outsider that's able to kind of break through the tough exterior is also something that can help, so that again, it's like, oh, there are things outside of just this one like source of revenge that can fulfill me, that I can feel connected to. Because it's also like, this is something that connects him back to his father. And like, he feels like he's like he's lost his father. He's lost this connection. And he also is under the impression that he's going to like regain his connection with his mother. And so when he's able to find other connections outside of his family, I think that's also really meaningful too.
You're muted, Nikisha.
Oh, I think you're muted.
I am. Mm-hmm.
Professional podcasters. I did it too.
Professional.
Jamie, you have to do it now.
No, there's quickly my upstairs neighbor, they have a dog. It's really cute, but he runs around and drops toys, and you can kind of hear it sometimes. So I have to mute to make sure that you're not hearing destruction.
I know that life.
I was about to say we didn't hear it. What, like you muted, so we didn't hear it.
Exactly.
Oh no, go for
yes.
it. Go for it. No.
No, I was going to say, but can we talk about the mom in a sense?
Oh my God, that was going to be what I wanted to talk about too. Twinsies.
Twins. Mutant Mikes and talking about moms. Yes.
Yeah, we're changing the name of the podcast to Mutant Mikes and Talking Moms.
And Moms.
And Talking
Mikes
Moms.
And moms.
Mikes and Moms. That sounds like it could be a street joke, but anyway. So I didn't really have a particular question about the mom, just an opinion. So if Brian, you have other things to add, please add. But do we think that it's kind of believable behavior that she would turn her back on her son when he comes back and says, hey, I'm trying to rescue you. And she's saying, oh, my life was miserable. I didn't want that life anyway. And now I have somebody that I love and we have a child out of love. So like, forget you. I don't know how I felt about that in that moment. Did y'all have any opinions about that?
I mean, I guess like the reveal is that she was also a slave, right, and was taken. And then, again, like the allusions to like her being assaulted and his father being like this really brutal, aggressive guy. And I can imagine, because we're not getting like the story is being told through his lens, right? It's his narrative. Mm-hmm. So we're obviously missing a lot of things, including, who his father really was. And so even in the start of the movie, when he's like, Daddy's here, or whatever he says, I forget how he says it, but like the excitement that he has versus Nicole Kidman, who's just like, never come into my room unless you not, or whatever she says.
Yes.
And so like, where this whole story is through his perspective, and we don't really know the kind of person, like we don't know the objective truth, the facts. So I think that he's seeing her as a villain. But I think if that is also reality, then is it not understandable? Like if she is a victim of sexual assault, like by Ethan Hawke as the king, and then was forced to like carry his child, like I can imagine her relationship with that child is very complicated. Yeah. So it didn't like, I wasn't not bought into it. What I thought was weirder, there was something weird that happened in that interaction before she like turned on him again. Like she said something about how like, I don't know, it felt very like Oedipus complex. Absolutely. Where she was alluding to like, oh, well, if you kill him, then you're the king. Then like, I guess you take me. And I was like, whoa, slow down, mom. This is getting crazy. What are you talking about? So that confused me.
Well, yeah, because she was talking about, a son will always love his mother, and the mother will always love the son. And yeah, the minute that they had that weird kiss interaction, definitely was
Well,
Oedipus vibes.
there is that Gertrude Hamlet scene in Hamlet that can be played multiple ways. One of which is that Gertrude is trying to kind of seduce him to get him to do what she wants. I think Glenn Close played it that way in the Mel Gibson Hamlet. But I don't know how often it's played that way, but it can be played that way for sure.
Oh, geez. Did you have any other thoughts about the mom character, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the gray. Like, to me, that twist was not the specifics of it, but the fact that she was happy, I was expecting. Because that's the gray. This movie is less interesting if his revenge isn't challenged in a very intense way.
Yeah.
And that's probably for him through this process, that and like actually like falling in love and like having a heart or whatever it is. Meanwhile, he gets stabbed in the heart. I thought that was interesting again.
Yes.
All of that is just like, I mean, I expected that from it. I think it was a good scene, well acted, definitely impactful. But yeah, I mean, she just like, she has a complicated relationship and she's happy. She was, she was one of the slaves that the king slept with. And Jamie said, like, through all that trauma and all of that, just not feeling wanted or needed or loved, and second rate to her son, to the gold and the spoils that come with all of that. Like like even at the beginning when Willem Dafoe makes that joke about the mother and he is and the uncle is quick to like snap at him. Everyone's like, it's just a joke, bro. Chill out. Like, she's actually being defended by somebody. And like, she's just like, she's living the life that she wants to live. And now her old son from a world that she doesn't want to pass, that she doesn't want anymore, is trying to take that away from her. And he does. I mean, while she's still alive, he kills her firstborn. And so yeah, it adds a whole complex layer, and that whole sequence with his mom and the kid leads to his decision in the end, because he killed that man's family, his uncle's family. Like, now he has to fix it all, or at least take his uncle out of the picture, because
finish what he started.
Yeah, because then like Jamie said, like, then his kids are going to be killed.
Right.
And I liked all the Valkyrie stuff, the Valhalla stuff a lot, excuse me. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that made sense, because I was trying to think in my brain, what did I miss for him to get off of that boat and go back? But it's because the uncle was still alive and he found out that Anya was pregnant, and if the uncle will come back and kill the kids. So he had to go back and kill the uncle.
He knows what it's like. He has nothing. Now his uncle has nothing. Like, he has nothing to lose. He's going to take everything that he loves away from him again.
Yeah.
But
that tracks. That makes sense.
Before we go to Rotten Tomatoes, I have to ask the question. The question I have to ask is The Northman a horror movie?
Jamie?
No. That was it. The end.
I agree. No. And was it marketed as a horror movie? Because I don't think I watched a trailer for this either, or have seen any type of interview or TikTok social media thing about, look at Robert Eggers' new horror movie.
Yeah, I don't think it was. Again, I haven't watched them, but I didn't think going in thinking that. I did not go in, even without watching anything, think this was going to be a horror movie. And let's be honest, like, The Witch is a horror movie-ish. It is. The Lighthouse is debatable, I guess. But I would lean more towards horror movie. Yeah, like psychological thriller. Yeah. But this one, like. So this is what I said to Jamie afterwards. I don't think this is a horror movie. This is a revenge epic. It's bloody. It's all of the above. However, there is that supernatural element to it. There is the crows cut him down. You know what I mean? Like, the sword only works for him or at night or whatever the case. For him. there's a lot of supernatural, like the Anya Taylor character, like she's something witchy's about her. He's seeing all of these things around him, the soothsayers, the all of that stuff. There's that element of the gods, and Valhalla and the Valkyrie. So there are spiritual, like spooky elements to this that are real, that are actually in the movie. They are not like that. And at one point, the uncle, excuse me, believes that they are being haunted by a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But because we know that it is the Alexander Skarsgård character, it's not a horror movie to us. However, if this was told from the perspective of the uncle, and then the uncle's twist is that his nephew is all grown up and one of his slaves, like that would be a horror movie, because then we'd be seeing it from the uncle's perspective. We're like, oh my gosh, my men are being killed. Is there a monster out there? Like, what's happening? We are being haunted. And then all of a sudden his nephew would reveal him. But that's not the movie we saw, nor was it trying to be. There are spooky elements to this, but I don't know if this is a horror movie.
I think it would have been cool, though, if it was from the perspective
Yeah,
of
sure.
the uncle. Just saying, you're talking about it, that seems like something I would absolutely want to watch. Like, who's killing all these people? What's happening?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, fair.
yeah, definitely not. So we're 3 for 3. The Northmen, you are not going to be America's Next Top Horror Movie.
Oh, I was going to be like, thank you, Maury.
Sorry.
The Northmen, you are not the father.
Yes.
We were rooting for you. We are all rooting for you. Oh my God. That's like top 5 best like reality TV moments ever.
Ever. And I'm so glad I experienced that in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Also unrelated, do you remember those makeover episodes and how they just they just tried to intentionally like uglify all of these like beautiful people.
Absolutely.
It was just like, it was so heinous. It was so that's the real horror of this episode.
Yes.
Is America's Next Top Model makeover episodes are the true horror.
They are the true horror in our day and age. I also stand for all the TikToks that are talking about how toxic that show is, because it is.
Oh my God, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so Brian, we're ready. Sorry, we're ready for Rotten Tomatoes.
No, let's do it.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right. What do you think this movie has on Rotten Tomatoes as of now?
I mean, it's because I would say 85.
I'm going to say 89.
This has an 89.
What do I win?
The critics' consensus. A bloody revenge epic and breathtaking visual marvel, The Northman finds filmmaker Robert Eggers expanding his scope without sacrificing any of his signature style.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That tracks.
Huzzah.
Yes, Jamie gets bragging
Huzzah.
rights for the rest of the week.
I wonder like what's going to come after this. Like he's covered just like very, very different topics, and definitely interested to see how his career keeps going.
Totally.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting. All right, let's some 4 S's.
The 4 S's.
Yes.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
The 4 S's for this are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls is how well it handles mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it. Shakes is how much are we going to shake it off. How much does it stick with us? And then suggestions, we'll like throw in some suggestions there. Let's start with Jamie for skulls.
I have no idea with the S's. Like I'm feeling kind of stuck.
That's another S.
Yeah, I reject your S's and I present a new one.
Right.
I mean, I'm gonna give it a 3 because I personally fundamentally do not believe in fate. And so I feel like people's choices like are their own, and live outside of like what's predetermined.
Mhm.
This is all this backstory of justifying my score.
Yeah.
So I feel like in real life, people are the makers and masters of their own destiny and like would make choices that are of their own doing versus like because it's written in the stars kind of thing.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Nikisha?
Yeah. I'll give it a 4 just for the conversations that we have about revenge in general. Because even though this is based on, like Jamie said, the fates and he's just following that, it's still a real thing of people and revenge and what it can do to a person. So, yeah.
Sure. I'm also going to give it a 4 because I don't think the point of this was to break down a lot of that stuff, but I thought the acting does a great job of keeping like some realism and consistency to it. So I'm going to give it a 4. Scares. How scary was this? Was it scary? Scary Spice?
Scary Spice. We love her.
No, this wasn't really scary. I mean, it was like violent, but I wasn't super anxious or like tense. So I'll probably give it like a 1.5.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just going to give it a 1 just for it being bloody.
Yeah.
Bloody good time.
Bloody.
I'm going to give it a 2. Cuts a guy's nose off and then he's weirdly moved down.
Yeah.
Okay. Shakes. How much is going to stay with you, Jamie?
I mean, I really like this movie. I'd like to recommend it to lots of people and definitely get their takes. So I think I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Cool.
Ooh.
Nikisha.
I mean, it's no Leslie Vernon, so I'm gonna give it a 4.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 7. I dug it.
Nice.
All right. Suggestions. What else would you suggest?
Jamie's just shaking her head.
Truly, I'm at a complete loss. And I think, Nikisha, there was something that you had said earlier of like really enjoying like Viking type stories and themes. This is not an area that I'm super familiar with. I don't have a lot of comparable movie experiences to share. So like I actually don't have anything.
Ooh, that's a first.
I am without a suggestion.
I mean, it also is hard because it's not a horror movie, so there's no horror related things. I don't know. I was just watching this movie and I thought about the movie Troy that I've always liked and enjoyed, which is
I never saw it.
Okay. Well.
Around that, I'm going with Gladiator.
Yeah.
All
good things.
Also, haven't seen that.
So the reason I'm choosing Gladiator, one, it's a period piece, but it's also a story of revenge. It's also a story of destiny, and there's a supernatural element to it. And it's a story about like revenge for your family, something that was supposed to be yours that was taken away from you, rising through the ranks to come face to face with the person who took everything from you. So I'm gonna go with and plus like incredible performances. They tried to make it as historically accurate as possible, without being distracted by things of that time that we would have thought like not to be true, but is true. Because apparently I saw on TikTok that they had billboards in Roman times. Like that would like for businesses and stuff like that. But Ridley Scott for Gladiator was just like, we can't, like, people will not believe that this happened in Roman times. Like, so they cut that. Like, if you saw like billboards for like, like Frank's, like, horse repair, like you wouldn't believe that to be like, you thought you'd be like, what is happening? Like, this is a joke, but like, so anyway,
right.
I'm gonna go with Gladiator. That was a weird tangent.
But that's a cool nugget of info.
Yeah. Cool.
Party topics.
Yeah. Anyway, the Norseman.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps up our episode of The Northman. You can follow us on all of the social medias at Talk Horror Pod, POD, on the TikTok and Insta and the Twitter. So, yes. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
Sure, you can find this podcast wherever you find podcasts, things like Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
And thank you.
I feel like we should end with a sound, some type of like Gladiator-esque Viking sound.
Oh, I did swords clanking at the beginning, so I'll just do swords clanking again.
Yeah. Or like Ride of the Valkyrie. Is that crazy classical song? But anyway, yes. Thanks, guys.
Love it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.